Accessing agent files. Brian Sovryn. Early 21st century anarchist. Creator and host of the podcast Sovryn Tech. By the year 2021, the show would be instrumental in the downfall of various conservative ideologies in the government, helping usher in an incredible time.
Hey, want to take a walk on the wild side and experience the bleeding edge of technology? Then get ready, because it doesn't get much more edgy than this. You're in for a wild ride. You're listening to Sovryn Tech with your host, the man in triple black, the Golden Stallion of the tech world, Brian Sovryn. He's got a huge brain. And now here's Brian.
Oh yes, I talked about this earlier in the week, or earlier last week. I can't keep track of time anymore. Not since I've been to 2099 anyway. That's right, the man of tomorrow, the Golden Stallion. Here for a little special, and I'm joined by the lovely and hyper-intelligent Dr. Stephanie Murphy, the Duchess of Debauchery.
Hello.
Yes.
Thank you for having me on. I guess we have to keep our promises sometimes, because there was that week where you tweeted that I was going to be on and then I wasn't able to be on. So
yeah, well, it was just,
here I am.
We were both so insanely busy, in fact, with really, because you were as well, and I've made sure to say it, that you are as quintessential of HYPERCRONIUS's existence, the game that I've released recently, as anybody, as me. I mean, you really did quite a bit. And that's what this is actually, absolutely. And so, the show must go on, though. And so me being somewhat of a professional, I guess, not saying you're not professional.
When you want to be.
Yeah. but I have content that I don't have contractual obligations, but I have personal obligations. When I say I'm going to release an episode every week, I want to make sure I do that. But anyway,
you've been good with that. You've been really consistent.
Yeah. That was the first time that I ever didn't release it on a Saturday in over 2 years.
And you definitely had a good reason. And that's what we're kind of going to be talking about today. Not the late release of the show, but just the making of HYPERCRONIUS, what actually happened behind the scenes that you didn't get to hear about.
Right. Yeah, and maybe more about the game. A lot of people, I think, have a lot of questions. And actually, Stephanie, you're pretty much going to be guiding this show.
Oh, cool. I'm sort of going to interview you.
Yeah, you are going to be Charlie Rose, or at least the female
Charlie
version.
Rose?
Charlie Rose is a very famous interviewer for like the past 40 years. I don't know.
I feel like I should have known that.
Yeah, that's okay.
I just didn't care.
That's all right. You'll be the Tom Snyder.
Who's Tom Snyder?
Shit. Tom Snyder's amazing. The guy's a hero of mine. But no.
I have no idea who you're
He
talking
did
about.
it in the 70s and like maybe in the 80s. He did a show on NBC called The Tomorrow Show. Instead of The Tonight Show, he did The Tomorrow Show. And then later on, I believe he was on CBS or maybe it was ABC, but he ended up doing a late night television, like a late night television show at the time. So just a really good, he's most famous for interviewing Charles Manson.
Oh,
in the 80s. I mean, like that was really, his claim to fame, but he's actually a hell of an interviewer, very funny guy. So anyway, there's a little history for you folks.
Well, I'll try to top that. I'm not sure if I can top Charles Manson. I think that kind of depends on you too.
Well, I don't know what that says about me, because if you're the interviewer, that makes, you're already better than all of them combined. That's a fact.
Oh, thank you.
Anyway, but yeah, we're going to talk about HYPERCRONIUS, and Stephanie, why don't you go ahead and lead? You want to lead this out? You want to go for it?
Yeah, I guess so. Okay, so I guess to set the stage here, Brian, do you remember back maybe 6 months ago, something like that? We were sort of having a conversation about, I don't know, like the direction of our careers.
Yeah.
And not to get too personal or anything like that. We have a lot of conversations about stuff like that all the time. And in this particular one, you basically admitted to me or revealed to me that you have always sort of had this fantasy of being a game designer.
Yes.
But that you thought that basically you couldn't do it because you had some limiting beliefs around that, like that people would think, oh, you're just a slacker who wants to play video games all day. People would believe that you weren't doing anything serious with your life, that you were just just kind of a video game nerd and tried to turn it into a job.
Sure.
What changed that for you?
Well,
I mean, when did you sort of let go of some of those beliefs and say, you know what, this is a legit career and this is something I could do seriously?
Yeah, I'm not sure when exactly that all changed around. I actually was trying my hand at that time because, I'm trying to, build and rebuild, my life. I've been trying to for the past couple of years, and you've been absolutely instrumental and helpful in that. I couldn't have done it without you. And, I've been looking for various, entrepreneurial avenues to take. And, I've been working with Free Talk Live for a while now as an ad exec, but I wanted to do something, that was me. You know what I mean? It's nothing against Free Talk Live. I love those guys. I'm just saying that.
Yeah, but it's not your business.
Right,
it's not your passion.
Exactly. And so I actually tried for a little while to actually be a professional gamer instead of actually making a game. And then, in all honesty, one day Humble Bundle, which is this great, site where you can purchase games and they give to charity when you purchase them, digital games. They had RPG Maker on sale, or RPG Maker, VX Ace, and a whole bunch of expansion packs and all this stuff. They had it on sale for like $6. Like it was the weekly bundle, and you could grab it and it would go to charity or whatever. And I was like, well, you know what? I've got $6. What the hell? And so I grabbed it and, I looked at it and I said, I think I could learn this, and that's something I want to get out of the way real quick. In this is that I think a lot of people think of RPG Maker as, we talk about like a game designing not being a serious job, or, that working within video games is not a serious job. I think a lot of people have this mystique or this idea that somehow RPG Maker is, you don't have to know anything. You don't have to know any coding. You don't have to, know any, you can just go in there, plug and play, and away you go. No, RPG Maker is a full-on game engine. It might be a little bit easier than some other game engines out there, but you've got to know your stuff. But when I realized that, like, some of the things that I'd already known, like Ruby and some other languages and whatever, when I saw that could really, like, that I could do this, with this software and using this game engine, that I could actually make a game, that's really where it turned around, was when I saw that it was really possible to make that happen. As to where in the past, building games, it kind of felt like, and this isn't entirely true, but I think in my own mind, it often felt like, like I'd have to know, and I used to kind of know this, but I'd have to know assembly language. I'd have to be so bare bones, and it would take so long to do. As to where when I saw what RPG Maker could do, I saw that, hey, actually this can be done in relatively short order. And so, that allowed for that. The other thing, though, that really made it possible was I remember talking to you about it. And you said, you know what? Even when I said to you, I'm thinking about trying out, to be a professional gamer.
Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah. And you didn't think it was crazy.
No.
Right. And when I said I was going to make a game, you didn't think that was crazy. And so, like, that's the key thing that actually made it seem real to me, was that somebody that I hold in such high regard and whose opinion I really cared about looked at me and said, no, that's not nuts. No, that's not, that's perfectly legitimate. I think it's a fantastic entrepreneurial pursuit.
Hey, I get it. I mean, when I quit medical school
right.
and walked away from my PhD in biochemistry to be a voice actor, I'm sure 99% of people out there in society thought I was fucking nuts. Yeah.
In fact, I see the conversations when people who haven't seen you in a couple of years or whatever finally catch up with you and they just go, oh my God, you dropped out, or whatever. I mean, you got your PhD.
Because
it's not like you walked away, empty handed.
True. But I'm not, I'm not working in the field. It was a total, complete career change.
Right.
And, at the beginning, it was really scary, as I've talked about many times on this show and other shows. It was scary at first, especially because of that societal pressure.
Yeah.
But I guess I just realized I was really sick of listening to what everybody else thought I should do. And I wanted to do what I wanted to do.
Yeah, exactly.
And I finally decided to actually do it. And I'm so glad I did. Because now, 2 years later, after I made that career change, I can say, yeah, I'm a success story. I have, credits with major national brands. I'm voicing TV and radio commercials.
Right.
I'm doing audiobooks. I've got my own website. I've got a bona fide business. I work every day doing voiceover, except sometimes on the weekends, but sometimes I do. And, I'm legit. I'm the real thing.
Yeah.
And I can say that now.
Yes.
But, I know that there are a lot of other people out there who, like, there are people every day who are like, yeah, I think I should go into voiceover. How do you break into the voiceover business? And people ask me that question a lot.
Right.
And, most of them, 90%, I would say, they're not really serious about it. They're not really willing to do what it takes, or they have a lot of misconceptions about it. They think it's just as easy as, oh, well, you just get a microphone and you just talk into it and that's voiceover. Well, no, it's not. There's acting involved.
Yeah.
You have to engineer your studio and engineer your audio.
Right.
And those two things I'm getting better at as time goes on. I'm trying to educate myself about them. And, I am getting better at those things all the time. But, a lot of people think of these sort of dream jobs as, really easy, really cushy. You don't actually have to do anything. And as a result, there's a lot of competition and nobody actually gets work in those fields. And that's the trade-off. It doesn't have to be that way. There are people who get voiceover jobs. Right. I'm one of them now.
Yeah,
and there are
exactly.
people who design video games for a living. And there are professional gamers.
Yeah. And there's people that there's one-man teams. In fact, I just read a great review on PC Gamer today for a game that got an 85 out of 100. And it took the guy 4 years, and the game shows. It's called Axiom something. I forget the name of it.
4 years for an 85%?
But he's one guy, but that 4 years is going to pay off.
I hope so.
You get an 85% on
investment.
PC Gamer. I mean, you're banking, and it's already getting released on Steam, and all that. I mean, it's a big deal.
Oh, cool. Well, good for him. But the point is, somebody out there is being successful at these jobs. That's why they're known as dream jobs. And you can be that person who is successful in an unlikely scenario. You just have to know what to do, and you have to be prepared for it. And you can't go in with the mentality that you're entitled to succeed, or that you're going to succeed, or that it's just easy, or it involves luck. It's actually not luck, it's work.
Yeah.
Just like anything else.
That's the thing, it's hard work. Like writing's fucking hard. That's hard work. Harlan Ellison will always tell anybody that. It's like, look, it's hard work, man. That's why people get paid, but it really, the thing is, though, is that I think you really do need the key ingredient in any pursuit that you want to do, is you got to have that reality check. And whatever that looks like, and in my case, it was you. You were the reality check. And, you looked at...
You have no idea how proud that makes me feel.
Yeah, no, really. And you always are. Like, anytime, believe me, if people knew the conversations, speaking of conversations we have, if people knew the conversations we had, that we've had and still do have, holy shit. I'll say the most insane things. And, and you're right there, boy, if it's not kosher.
Not kosher. That implies dogma. But if I hear something that's inconsistent or contradictory, I try to bring it up. And point it out.
No, you do great. So really, and I can't be thankful enough. But the point being is that, you said, no, you know what? You could do this. You said that to me. But people need to be honest with each other. If they don't, like you were just saying with some people, voice actors, it's like, look, if the person doesn't have it, they don't have it. Mm-hmm. And that's okay. It's like in skateboarding, not everybody's Tony Hawk, it's not magic, but there's something there, and so.
Certain jobs, artistic jobs, talent counts for something.
Right.
Yeah.
And
and it doesn't get you all the way there, but it's sort of like necessary, but not sufficient.
Right. Well, that's the thing. So for me, I didn't know how to program a game. I know something about programming. I've, been in the tech field long enough, and I know a couple languages, but, the only thing I figured I could deliver was a story, was a tremendous story. And part of what the other thing that kind of convinced me that I could pull this off was I did the 2099 special, which I kind of referenced earlier in the episode, where I pretended that I was doing a podcast from the year 2099, and I did it no script. I just did it. I had like kind of a, I had like my show notes that people see all the time, but there's not much there.
Yeah.
And I
no more than bullet points.
Yeah, I had bullet points, And I did, over 2 hours of just talking, and kind of making it up as I went along. And people thought it was great. And I appreciate that. I'm not saying it was great. I'm just saying other people thought it was amazing. They really enjoyed it. And so when I saw that people were receptive to that, I was like, okay, that kind of proves my storytelling chops. And so here's, video games is a great venue to tell stories. It might be the best venue next to comic books because it mixes visuals. Then there's also the interactivity, which nothing else has.
And there's always the ability in fiction to get away with more than you could in nonfiction.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
As far as like anarchist memes or whatever.
Right. So that's another part of what led me to think I could do this, was that I had that objective check from other people saying, yeah, no, you can tell a story. And so I went forward with that. So I guess next question.
Well, okay. So like the mindset had to be in place before you even undertook this. I just want to say a couple more things about this sort of setting up, like before we even get into the nuts and bolts of how you made the game. I feel like you were saying RPG Maker is not necessarily so straightforward.
Right.
I feel like there's a few analogies here. RPG Maker to me, and I haven't used it to do a game, but I've seen you do it, seems a little bit like WordPress. It's like it can give you the tools to build a great website, and you won't have to build that website from scratch, but you got to know how to use plugins and you got to know how to set it up. Otherwise, you're going to be spending a lot of time figuring it out.
Yeah,
would you say that's a fair analogy? Because you actually also learned WordPress in this scenario. Yeah,
that's the thing too. Right. I mean, I used WordPress a long time ago, but now it's vastly different, vastly better at that. I originally, I was setting up a website. That's the thing. HYPERCRONIUS is so much more than just a game. It was like it's this long, it's this huge drawn out plan, which we can talk about, maybe over the course of the special. But yeah, I learned that because originally I was just going to do a website and I was going to essentially do straight HTML and just be like, well, you know what? I don't think websites have gotten that. I hate JavaScript and I don't think websites have gotten any better since the 90s. So fuck it. If it looks like in the 90s, then fine. You know what I mean? And that's
somehow I think that might have been lost on some people.
Yeah. Well, anyway, I think your analogy is good that yes. Okay, sure. It makes it easier. I don't want to use the term shortcuts, but it gives you some pretty powerful tools, but boy, you got to know how to put them together. Yeah. And you've got to have the content. You really got to have the content.
Yeah.
Otherwise
definitely.
it's meaningless. I mean, like the website that I built, as analogy, is now housing 2 blogs. It's also a store for any of my products that I have coming out. And I've got more than just games, and I have more than one game coming. And it also houses, the podcast. There's so much there, but you've got to be able to deliver that content, and you got to at least try and make that deadline as best as you can, because that was one of the unfortunate things that happened with HYPERCRONIUS is it was just about a month late, just under a month late.
Yeah. And we will talk about that for sure. But yeah, so getting back to the analogies, I guess I was saying RPG Maker strikes me as being kind of like WordPress.
Right.
And also I see I don't know, it's tough to call it self-publishing, but like independent game development or game design, let's just call it that.
Yep, indie dev.
Indie game dev.
Yep.
Strikes me as being a lot like Kindle self-publishing was 10 years ago.
Yeah. So this is something like I had mentioned to you is that I felt like, we're already, a lot of people are already saying that we're in a golden age of gaming because the tools exist to make these games. Just like 10 years ago, when Amazon released the Kindle and ebooks became a reality, like a legitimate thing, it allowed people to do tons of self-publishing to the point though now, where I think that now the market's like flooded beyond.
That's the thing.
Yeah.
I think, and it's the same way with audiobooks too, with the rise of ACX. That's one of those things where every person who thinks, oh, I have a nice voice, I should get into voiceover, goes and creates a profile and starts doing audiobooks for audible.com on ACX. And they hook up with authors who, have bad books with no marketing plans, and then the books never sell. Take it from me. I did this. But it's getting worse because there's like 17,000 profiles of narrators on there, most of them who have never really done a book.
Right.
And only a few of them are really professional or experienced.
Right.
And then there's, a million self-published authors who want someone to make them a free audiobook and want the narrator to invest all the work up front to make the audiobook. And then if it ever sells, they'll maybe get paid. But the one who's really getting paid is Audible because they take 60%. I mean, like, that is just that whole industry of audiobooks, audible.com. It's just so ripe for disruption. It's not even funny.
Oh, yeah.
But anyway, like you said, the market is flooded. It's flooded with
books. Yeah.
With books. It's flooded with, low quality audiobooks, low quality self-published books. And there are some amazing self-published books out there.
But
Great
you're never going to find them.
But they do get harder to find because you have to wade through the crap that is just, man, I've had some self-published authors contact me through ACX, which is ACX is the back end for audible.com. It's the audiobook creation exchange, and it allows self-published authors and independent audiobook producers to find each other and hook up and make audiobooks.
Right.
Okay. And so, as you can imagine, there's a lot of crap on there on both the narrator side and the author side. And I've had some authors just contact me and make me offers to produce their audiobooks, which is insulting because it's like they're making you an offer to produce their audiobook for free. Gee, thanks. They're offering you free work that may or may not ever pay off. Gee, thanks. I'm so appreciative. But you get, I remember I got this one that was like an erotic title once, and it was just, the grammar was terrible. You could tell they hadn't even bothered to try to edit it. The subject matter was horrible. There was a quote. There was something in the manuscript that it said she's seen something off in the distance.
Wow.
Not she saw something off in the distance, which is English. And it wasn't dialogue either. It was it was writing about the character. She's seen something off in the distance. Oh my God. So obviously I turned that one down. But that's
it's
kind of,
it wasn't a typo. It was bad English.
It was the author's from the author's mind. That hadn't passed by an editor.
Right.
So this is just, there's some crap out there.
Yeah. There's a lot.
Yeah. And self-publishing has sort of two sides to it. But, I would say that the self-published book market is mature at this point. It's not a few years ago, you could say maybe it was the Kindle Gold Rush.
Right.
If you wrote a book for Kindle and it was offering value and it was about something good and interesting and it was well written, you could do pretty well for it. Nowadays, it's harder to do well because there's just so much more competition and the market's kind of saturated, and there's been books written about a lot of different things, and it's just not the gold rush phase anymore. It's more leveling off. Yeah. But I could see maybe with video games, with indie dev video games, I'm sure there's crap out there too. People make shitty games with typos and errors.
Oh, sure.
And
I think some would say
bugs.
HYPERCRONIUS is a shitty game.
I don't think it's a shitty game.
No, I don't either. I'm just saying there are some who would say that. That's all.
Perhaps that would be their opinion. I'm talking about games that just analogous to the bad grammar in ebooks. Yeah. Games that are full of bugs and are not even playable.
There's games on Steam that I own that literally you fall through the floor in these games. You're it's a kind of a run and gun or something like that, and you just there's points where you walk through a fence or something. I mean, things you just should not be able to do, and it totally ruins the game. Yeah. So in that sense, right, there are games that are of that unfortunate caliber.
Yeah, so there's some of those out there,
and they get on the big distribution things. It's not easy to get on Steam, but go ahead.
Yeah, that's kind of the puzzling thing. I mean, I'm sure a lot of the games that are sold on Steam and a lot of the ebooks that are sold on Kindle are never opened. The person never cracks them, and that's how they've convinced them to buy it. right? But then they're not actually, the person never reads it. But anyway, so I think there's some of that out there, but the indie game dev world has a lot of potential to have that sort of gold rush moment, like the Kindle Gold Rush thing.
Yeah, I think that's true. And that was one of the other confident things about it, was that people are taking indie games seriously now. Like Amazon has its own store for indie games. I mean, there's a lot of potential there. And I saw
they're smart. They know what happened with Kindle.
Right. And I saw the potential, to do it. So I think that's, both of those analogies, the WordPress analogy and the Kindle, book analogy, are both very, very good. To describe like what maybe the video game market can look like, what it can take, et cetera.
Yeah. Yeah. And I also think just for you personally, Brian, it seems like this is a job that fits really well with you. Just with your personality, with your values, your goals. You don't want to work for someone else.
No.
You want to be at home with me all day and hanging out, and me too. That's what I want.
I mean, we work hard. We work our asses off.
We sure do. Yeah, but we don't have to commute, and that's
priceless.
Darn nice.
Yeah. Yeah, no, absolutely.
I mean, and that's just a start. Like you don't want to be, I guess, anybody's slave. Like I don't want to put it that way to offend anybody who has a boss, but you don't want to have a boss.
No, I don't want to have a boss, and I don't want to be a boss either.
Yeah, and you don't really want to work as part of a group. I think you would probably be more happy as a solopreneur.
Yeah,
which I definitely am.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'm open to like working with people to some degree in the future, maybe. But by and large, yeah. I mean, maybe, now that we're talking about it, maybe that's one of the things that really convinced me that making a video game was a legitimate thing to do today, is that you can do it on your own.
Yeah.
And
do it all by yourself.
Yeah. Because I mean, especially after being in the Army and all that stuff, where if someone else in your group fucks up, you have to pay for it and all that. I mean, that very much gets you in the mindset of, okay, if you want something done right, you got to do it yourself.
Yeah.
And so to have that much control, where I had control over the music, I mean, everything, every little thing, was me, or I purchased it, from someone else, regardless, it's mine. And I didn't have to wait on anyone else's deadline. I didn't have to, wait on anything like that. That was really, really important to me. So that might be the number one thing that made it real in my mind, that I could do this, was that you can do it alone. And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with working with a team. I mean, obviously, my games are not going to be the Battlefields or the Call of Duties. Not that I'd want them to be a Call of Duty. They'll never be that, but they can still be tremendous games, with great stories and solid gameplay.
Yeah, absolutely. Not like you would ever want to be like Call of Duty.
Yeah, no, of course not.
But yeah, like this whole thing, it's a gig that's aligned with your values. And that's really important, both in terms of feeling motivated to do your work and also in terms of just your overall happiness. I mean, we're not independently wealthy. We do work.
Yeah,
we're working class. So, we might as well do work that we enjoy.
Yeah,
and the work that's on purpose.
Right. I mean, I'd love to personally get to the point where I'm well off.
Yeah.
But I am not. I mean, I'm not at all, I mean, that's why, the game is just, one, I can't be a one trick pony. I'm not just doing the video games. I'm doing this show. I do Sovryn Tech.
But that's another thing within the game universe, or within the universe that you've created with HYPERCRONIUS. There's so much potential to expand, to do different things, it's just the beginning. It's not like you're limited to one thing.
Right.
It's kind of a living, breathing world that you can update and add more onto.
Yeah, and I plan on it. I mean, there's going to be there's sections of the website that haven't been fleshed out yet, and part of that is, just as coming soon or whatever. And part of that is because there is going to, there are going to be books. There are going to be, again, more games. There's going to be all kinds of things. I mean, I definitely plan. Not everything has to be a multimedia experience, but HYPERCRONIUS, the universe, is a multimedia experience. In fact, it might even, I'll give this little hint, there might even be parts of the Sovryn Tech podcast that have to do with the in-world, the in-universe of HYPERCRONIUS.
Oh, wow, cool.
So, in fact, if you get to the credits, which Shouldn't be that difficult. I wanted to make sure the game was easy. I wanted it accessible. I didn't want the controls to be crazy.
I did die while I was beta testing.
Yeah, that was amazing.
HYPERCRONIUS was defeated.
Yeah, all right. I'll talk about that for a second, okay? Because this is an RPG. For those that don't know, I mean, if you're listening to this, I assume you know. But it's an RPG, and I kind of made it... I'll talk a little bit about design here, okay? Because with RPGs... one of the things you have to do is you go through battles and you get experience points through that, and your character levels up. You get better hit points to where you can go through battles easier and all that stuff. And you get, new items and all this. You're building a person up. With this game, it was really important to me that, because like you said, this is a beginning. Okay. The thing is, this is a beginning for characters that, previous to this story that HYPERCRONIUS is, are, they're dangerous. I mean, like the Emok Dominion in the game, which are the kind of the bad guys. Okay.
The government.
Right. Yeah, they are the government. And the Kami, who are the opposite of the Emok. And I don't know if people notice that either, but Emok is just Kami spelled backwards. And that's because they're the antithesis of each other.
Oh, I didn't even notice that.
Yeah,
I did notice.
Go ahead.
I was going to see if you wanted to call him the Pinko Kami or something.
Well, that's the funny thing too, is that if one takes a look, the word Kami, Kami, is a transliteration of something that has nothing to do with communism. So, but I figured it'd be a nice trolling thing if people said, it's the commies, and like, there's even a point where the character Hyperion, who's kind of the main bad guy, says, those dirty commies.
Yeah, that's what I noticed it, I think.
Yeah. So it's a play on words, but the word commie actually does have a historical context that has zero to do with Russia and nothing to do with communism.
And would you care to explain that?
Not really, but...
Oh, come on. See, you always do this.
This is the thing. This is the beauty. I don't know
when gets it.
I know, but I don't know when I said this, but I said, look, if you kept Wikipedia on one screen and played HYPERCRONIUS on the other, you'd be reading for weeks. Like the game, it'd take you 2 weeks to get through the game. So the Kami, Kami, is actually the name of the Japanese gods in the Shinto religion. Oh. I'm not saying that has anything to do with because this is an origin story of humanity. But hey,
could it be?
Maybe
extraterrestrials.
maybe all that Shinto stuff came from somewhere. So anyway.
Okay, I think you did tell me that at one point, and I just forgot.
Yeah.
Because there's so much to it.
Well, at one point, like, the game was going to have a lot of Japanese stylings. I was thinking about doing that. And then I got a different character set, and I was like, no, I'm not going to do that. Like, as much as I appreciate Japanese culture, not the rape culture, of course, or some of the other, really unfortunate things, but some of it I really do appreciate. Maybe the more of the pop culture aspects of it. And, obviously listeners of this show know I'm a fan of ninjas. But, I feel like anyway, that was going to be a part of it, but that we'll save that maybe. I think there was a point I was going to get to, and I forgot what that was.
The Emok and the Kami opposites.
Yeah, I said how that
other.
Was backwards. But, well, anyway, I don't know what it is.
You'll probably remember it.
Yeah.
Okay, so anyway, why don't we talk about the story, and how you...
Oh, no. All right, never mind. I know what it is. I know I know where I was going. The battle between the Kami and the Emok had been going on for a while. And so I think it was really stupid that if these characters were somehow weak, like the lead character of HYPERCRONIUS and Gaia and Tiamat, they're like the leaders of this rebellion, of this nonviolent rebellion, or this... Yeah, non-killing is maybe the more accurate term, non-killing rebellion. And, why would you have them coming in weak? You know what I mean? Like, why would I want those characters to get built up? Especially in a game where the main thrust of the game is them going from one planet to another, all taking place on the starship. I was like, well, that's stupid. These are already so dangerous, that the Emok want to kill them. They should be all powerful. Right from the get-go of the game. And so there is no leveling up to do. They're already up to like level 60 when you play, but that was by design. And there was no experience points to be made. These people already are as powerful as you can get. And so
you actually had to go into the code of the game and sort of like change all that, right?
Yeah. You had to go very deep to make sure that stayed that way and that there wasn't any changes. That was really important to me to kind of get that across. There's a great game, probably my favorite RPGs. It's called Ark the Lad, and it was a trilogy that came out in the 90s. Okay. And in this trilogy of games is very unique. When they did the re-release for the PlayStation, it was great, where you played this character of Ark the Lad. And in the second game, you could actually, if you had the save game from the first game, you could keep all your stats, your high level from the first game and play it into the second. And then you could even do it into the third. And I was like, that's brilliant, because why the hell would you start the second game and have to rebuild Ark all over again?
He was a lad. He became a man.
He
doesn't want to go back to being a lad.
Yeah, so right. And so that was kind of the thing. So like, if people are wondering how come there's no like leveling up, how come there's no grinding, there's no experience points to be had, it's because no, these people are already insanely powerful. Now, if I do a game that takes place before,
there's some grinding. But it's not that kind.
Yeah, grinding is the word for like having to needlessly fight enemies and monsters and having counters to build up your character just because you needed to get to like the next stage of the game or the next, aspect of the game. If I ever made a prequel to HYPERCRONIUS, well, then of course it would make sense to have to build up HYPERCRONIUS because he's not that powerful character yet. But at this point in his life, he's this insanely powerful character. So if people are wondering how come there isn't any grinding, it's not out of laziness. That's totally by design, that I did not, I didn't want to have the player to have to worry about that. And I also felt like it would have taken away from the story. And that was the main thing, was to get that story out there.
Yeah. I mean, I think people might be surprised. Like, I remember talking to you about like, so what are people going to do when they play this game?
Right.
Because you said the only enemies are really going to be some snakes and like maybe some bosses.
Right.
And I was like, well, what's the action going to be? And you said, well, it's going to be mostly in the dialogue. And you were not kidding about that. There's not a lot of battling to be had.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's there, and there's a couple little things to do. Certainly I got pressed for time, and some of what I wanted. The game was always meant to be short. It was never, ever, ever, and I talked about it for months. It was never meant to be long. And so, as far as the action, no, a lot of it was getting that story out there. But that's the thing, is that it was meant to be really accessible, and it was supposed to just be this, largely the telling of a great story. And then the future games, once you get used to it and you understand what's going on, the future games, I'll get more into, like real depth of gameplay and some unique stuff. One of the things that I didn't get to, and I talked about this on Sovryn Tech before, but one of the things I didn't get to that I really wanted to make a reality in the first game in HYPERCRONIUS was being able to interact in the sex scenes.
Yeah, you got that feedback from somebody, huh?
Yeah, and it's a fact. I wanted that to be. I didn't even know. No one's ever really done this on, in a game like this, because the game is very much that Ark the Lad or Final Fantasy style gameplay. And no one, as far as I know anyway, nobody ever really, they always cheated. They would always put in a cutscene, or they would always put in like a fully animated cutscene or whatever. So it wasn't even like they were able to show it to you using the 16-bit sprites, which is what they call the characters. They call them sprites. You never saw this. And so in one regard, I think, actually in a lot of ways, I think the game is very trailblazing. One of them being is the seeing sex scenes with actual sprites. As far as I know, in a game that actually got a full-on release and that cost people some money. And believe me, this game's getting released. I'm getting it up on Amazon. I just got done putting it up on Desura. Of course they have to approve it all, but I submitted to Humble Bundle, all these people. So this is a real release. I don't think that's ever been done before. That showing sex with the sprites. And I wish I could have made it interactive. I ran against the clock though, and that's really it.
I thought the sex scenes were just so cute. I mean, and I actually helped you with them a little bit too.
Oh yeah.
Because we had to get creative, or mostly you, but we had to get creative to do that. Like what you're saying is totally true. It's not easy to make these little blobs on the screen appear to be humping and having sex.
Yeah. It was all trickery. And doing some code, some unique code at that.
You had them on the bed, and you had them doing the motion for walking to make it look like they were kind of, or like jumping.
Right.
And you had them like looking up to make them look like they were kind of laying on the bed, eating someone's pussy or something.
Right.
And then another thing that I had suggested to you was when you have the characters sort of on the bed facing each other and a little heart comes up out of their head, like they can have these thought bubbles.
Yes.
And so the heart thought bubbles,
they're like emotion bubbles.
Yeah, they're representing love. And then we had some sound effects that we added, little kissing sounds.
Right. You did all the moans. You had to do moans for like 4 women.
Yes. If you want to hear me faking orgasms, you can buy this game and you can listen to it.
That's right.
It's in there.
Yeah.
At a couple different points.
Yeah. And so all of that, and like even showing an orgasm in 16-bit, that's all original. As far as I know, no one's ever done that. I don't think people are really appreciating, because most people want to ignore that there's even sex in video games largely in the first place. Okay. But this is very original work being done here. And, it's something that I think I'm just going to expand upon, or I know I'm just going to expand upon and make better in future releases. But then, the
orgasms were cool the way you did that. It was sort of like a magic spell almost.
Well, yeah, so I used kind of the animations of all that, of like almost like what a healing spell would look like. But when you see it and you hear it, when it all comes together and you see what's going on,
it's obvious.
It's like, okay, sense. That's an orgasm, and that's cool. Yeah.
Yeah, I thought it was really creative and cute the way you did that.
Yeah, thanks.
Sure, no doubt some of that creativity, you can thank your teenage cybersex partners for for like giving you the skills to be able to portray sex in that kind of style.
Absolutely.
With limited tools.
Absolutely. I can't say this enough. The amount of, and this isn't even necessarily the World Wide Web, as it were. Like, my creative chops got built up so much due to cybersex in the 90s. Like, on IRC, in chat rooms. I mean, because like that's kind of how you had to do cybersex, is you wrote it like a novel. Mm-hmm. But the thing is because it was like this interactive novel type thing, the sky was the limit in what you could do. You could do things you couldn't do. You could do centaur sex. Oh man, I am so supportive of cybersex. I think it's a fantastic thing that people don't explure enough.
Talk about ways not to get pregnant or get an STD. Yeah. I mean, that's like...
And it can be hot.
Yeah.
It really can. I had a girlfriend when I was a teenager. And, I mean, we did that. And she was living in California. And, eventually, we got to spend a lot of physical time with each other down the line as well. But... there was points where after the fact where she, we would get done on IRC and then we'd call each other on the phone. And yes, I had to pay ridiculous long distance phone call bills back then.
Oh, man.
Oh, it's terrible. What a world. Kids don't realize how good they got it. God damn it.
Well, they may not, because if they have Skype, they can just get on video chat and they can say, "Oh, look at my tits." That's not very creative.
Yeah. And no cell phone. No cell phone service charges for long distance anymore.
Yeah. I mean, when you had to describe it, you had to say, my tits are mountains of billowy softness with little cherry nipples on top.
Yeah. /me. And then what, that's the code that you write out to make it show up like that. But anyway, my point being is that there was times after, having cybersex on IRC that, we'd call each other up after and she'd say, "Oh my God, I wish you were here right now. That was so hot." And, fortunately, not long after we were able to really be together and all that. But I can't say it enough, like how much that impacted, my ability to express a lot of the stuff. And I think, I hadn't even thought about it, but you're absolutely right. I think that translated very well into my ability, to make a sex scene out of this.
Yeah. As well as just your growing up with a love of video games, being a bona fide, genuine nerd. And...
Yeah, I say it all the time. I'm a historian first, a gamer second, third, I'm a tech journalist. But that is the order of my existence.
Where does nerd boy fall into that?
Oh, it's all nerdy. I mean, the whole historians are nerds, gamers are nerds. It's all nerdy.
Just checking.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, the sex scenes were one thing I really loved about the game. I thought they were just really cute and creative. I mean, and actually, to be honest, this again is my input on the game, and I'm just saying it because this is what I remember. But like, there were a couple of points.
I was going to say, you had to help me with dialogue.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. There were a couple of points where, I'm trying to think of how to say this without being too crass, but there were a couple of points where you were like,
"Oh, just say it."
Stephanie,
it's like,
can you take a look at this sex scene? And you would play it for me, and you would have Gaia or Tiamat on the bed or something, and she's saying, "Oh, HYPERCRONIUS, I love your cock. It's so big. Give me that fucking big dick." And I was like, Brian, this isn't a porn. You're not showing any really tits or anything. You're just you're showing these little sprites with little hearts that are coming out of their head.
Right.
You really got to make it just more cute. It has to be less pornographic and more cute. And so I said, why don't you change it to like, "Oh, HYPERCRONIUS, I need your love. Your love feels so good." Things like that.
Yeah, you were so key to so much of the game. But yes, the dialogue, huge help. And that's why I asked you. I was like, all right, look, I know how I'm writing this, and this is not cool. This because I wanted the game to appeal to women too. Like, again, people really.
Well, I'm a woman, and I can stand to see like, "Give me your dick" and things like that.
I understand that. Okay,
but it was just like it didn't go. The level of porniness of the dialogue just didn't match the visuals of the game. You know what I mean?
Right.
And I thought it was better if it was more consistent.
Yeah, absolutely. And something else I want to touch on. I don't mind if HYPERCRONIUS does very well and it only ever sells off of my website. Like, I can accept that fact. I still want it to do very well, of course. I think the reality of it doing very well and getting out there requires it to be on other distribution platforms.
Yep.
And so I'm not compromising here, because A, it would have taken me forever to make this, what I'm about to say, happen. So I wouldn't want to necessarily do it anyway. But B, it ended up being kind of the loophole that I could use. And that is that nudity, you can show, there's a game coming out in just a few days. I'm excited for it. It's probably, my favorite modern game series going, which is called The Witcher. And Witcher 3 is coming out. And they filmed 60 sex scenes. And they used motion capture where they had people acted out wearing those black suits with the little balls on them and all that. Okay. And so the video game industry has grown up enough to where it can handle sex scenes, but what it still can't seem to necessarily handle is full on nudity. Okay. So as far as I know, yes, that action's kind of there and it's happening, but there's really not, like, the nudity is to a minimum. Okay.
Yeah.
Just like in Grand Theft Auto, you can get a blowjob in the back of a car in Grand Theft Auto. You're not going to see the nudity, though. And you're rarely going to even see the action. But that's what's going on. So
I can't exactly say I'm disappointed about not seeing a dick in my video games.
Sure.
Let's be honest here.
Well, what do you say? I love you're saying about dick. Like,
oh, it's not my saying. It comes from an article that actually the article was shared by.
Okay.
It was an article that was called like the economics.
He can thank me later for him getting mentioned on my show. But anyway, go ahead.
The article was called the economics of Tinder or something like that. Uh-huh. And it opened up with a woman who was getting messages from guys, and she was just, the minute they did something wrong or that sent up a red flag, she would delete, not unmatch, not reply. And every time she would say, "Dick is abundant and low value."
That's hilarious. Right.
Takes a selfie of his boner without bothering to crop out his cat. Dick is abundant and low value. Delete.
And there's a proper way to do dick pics, right? Anyway, no.
Yeah, I think having your cat, I have to agree with the author. But anyway.
Yeah, but my point being is that there's no nudity in this game. Sex is clearly going on. There's orgasms, there's moaning, there's everything except for the fact that the sprites always have their clothes on.
Yeah, it's not exactly G-rated. Like, it's a weird combination. I'm really curious to see what some people do with it. You know, like if you get on some bigger gaming platforms where they're attempting to sort of give it a rating or something, or give it a, I don't know, to describe it in a way for parents to decide if it's appropriate for their kids. I'm really curious to see what they do with that, because a lot of the stuff is stuff that, like, I could imagine being on network TV with no problem.
Right.
There is no nudity. There's really no explicit language.
There's a little.
Maybe a tiny bit, but not much. It's definitely not over the top.
At the end, there's a fair amount, but go ahead.
Right. Yeah.
But I don't want to give that away.
There is an orgy scene. You know, there's some group sex. Yeah. I didn't say the orgy scene where it was.
Oh, anyway, go ahead.
You said that. Anyway, there's group sex depicted. There's polyamory depicted.
Yes. Which it may not be a first in a video game.
I'm sure it's not.
Yeah, Jade Empire had a where you could, like, the male character can go off with two women. Mm-hmm. So I don't think I'm the first, but I'm probably pretty close to being first. That, you know, of really having that in something that's not specifically like Japanese eroge or something.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I'm just curious to see how it gets received in that department. There's no violence. I mean, pretty much no violence, like not even death. Like,
yeah, not really. Like, the snakes are a different story because they're animals.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, and so that, you know, that's something too, is that, you know, the ability to have total control of the game and not to have to rely on, like, electronic arts saying to me, okay, we've got to kill this many people in this game. You've got to have this kind of action and all this stuff. That's something too that I like to think HYPERCRONIUS is really unique about, is that,
oh boy, that's a big gift.
Yeah. In fact, I don't really call them like battles. I call them encounters, because, you know, to call them a battle, I mean, in traditional senses, I suppose maybe some of them are. But I like to think of them as encounters. So it's another unique aspect of it. And in the story, you know, the Kami characters make it very clear they consider, sapient life to be sacred. And, you know, so they don't want to take it.
Yeah, and, absolutely.
Yeah, which I think is kind of unique too. That's a very unique message.
So, okay, let's talk. We've talked a lot about the plot and the story, but how did you come up with the story? Like, describe the process of writing the story. How much did you write down? How much was in your head? Like, how did you figure out the dialogue? Because the story was well fleshed out, and there are lots of places in the dialogue where it tells the story through dialogue, you know, without you having to have a narrator or like a disembodied head, except me at the beginning, which is kind of a disembodied narrator. But
no, you're not disembodied. Your body is looking amazing.
During that filming, it was funny because you kept like fixing this little scarf that was over my tits, and you're like, okay, I need to fix it again. Okay, I just need to position it just so.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Well, it had to look like, from one piece of recording to the next, it had to look the same.
Indeed.
Yeah. So that was
very important.
Yeah. So it was difficult to do, but go ahead. Go ahead. The story.
So, like, how much of this, like, what did you do for writing the story, and like, how did you plan all that out, or did you kind of do it on the fly?
So the idea of this being an origin story, actually, when I was on the Edgington Post last week, and you can listen to that at sovereigntech.ninja. You can listen to that episode where I put it into an episode. I had, you know, Mark he kind of pulled the cat out of the bag, because he says, "Oh, right, Brian, you believe that aliens, you know, like created life on Earth and all this stuff." And I had to correct him, and I said, no, not aliens. I think humans did it. Okay. And a conceit that I've made many times on Sovereign Tech is that, you know, the only way I'm open to any kind of alien life coming to Earth would be from Mars, like only within the solar system. I think it's largely impossible for life to come from anywhere else. You know, like we're, you know, by the laws of physics, we're pretty much stuck in the solar system, in my opinion.
Well, good, because I'm not really up for encountering the Borg.
Yeah, exactly. So this notion that, that there was an advanced civilization of some kind on Earth before recorded history is something I've studied and researched. And please, I've done actual research. I haven't just taken other people's word for it. So
you mean like David Icke?
Or people that listen to him.
Yeah. Giorgio Tsoukalos?
Well, Tsoukalos actually does a little bit of research. He's just oddball in what he thinks is going on. And
I think he gets laid a lot.
Oh, he's got it happening.
I think he's doing it all for the pussy, in my personal opinion.
I totally agree with you. So is Von Daniken. But anyway.
How can angels have sex?
How can angels have sex? Right. So no, I don't believe in aliens, or at least I don't believe in aliens visiting our solar system, or Earth for that matter. So, but the notion of there being an advanced civilization and kind of what is the history of that? That's something I've, fantasized and drawn out in my own mind for over a decade, So a lot of that backstory was already in my head of how that could work. The dialogue and the kind of the ideology in the game. And it's important to point out this game is it has a lot of ideology in it. And I've gotten reviews, very kind reviews, great reviews that were actually very level-headed reviews because they didn't mind critiquing me in certain points as well, where they said that the messages didn't beat them over the head. And I'm glad, because that's a fine line that storytellers walk.
Yeah.
When you're trying to push some kind of ideology, and libertarians are terrible about it. I mean, even great works by Ayn Rand, there's points where it's total speech, it's time for a libertarian speech, and it sucks, right? Because it's it's just shoved in there, and.
No, I'm just laughing because speaking of things that shared on Facebook, he shared something else today that I was reading, which was really funny. It was, the Babysitter's Club books.
Okay. No, yeah.
Well, I used to read the Babysitter's Club books. I read every single one when I was a kid. There were hundreds of them. Anyway, the first one was called Christie's Great Idea, where she starts the Babysitter's Club. And this blog post that he shared was a rewrite of that book as Ayn Rand. So it was Ayn Rand's The Babysitter's Club.
That had to be.
And it was so funny. It just starts out from Christie's perspective, and she's like, I choose the productive work that I do, and I have maybe another 80 years left on this planet, and I better do something that fulfills me and choose it. Otherwise, I might as well die. And it is all from me. I had these other girls that are working with me at the Babysitter's Club, but the Babysitter's Club is me. I, the individual. I is I.
Yeah.
It was really funny.
I can only imagine. Yeah. And of course he makes fun of anarchists. So whatever, he thinks they're idiots.
Yeah. It's kind of weird because when I met him, he was an anarchist, but, or at least that's what I thought.
Yeah. Anyway,
side note.
Yeah. That might even get cut out. So
we can bust his balls for not being an anarchist or for.
Well, yeah, but I don't need to bring him up on my show. I mean, he's an epic troll. He's that's free advertisement for this guy. But anyway,
hey, he shares good content. That's all I have to say.
Then if he wrote it, I'd give him credit. That's
harsh. Okay. Anyway,
so let's see. We're talking about Hypercronius. Where were we? Story.
Yeah, the story. The libertarians. Oh, that's what we were talking about. Libertarians beating people over the head with their message.
Yeah,
that's why I was mentioning about Ayn Rand.
Right.
She was famous. She was the biggest example of that.
Right. Okay. So yes, she would do that. And, I wanted to make sure that didn't happen. But anyway, so I wanted to plug in a lot of this ideology into the story. And, that was new because I can't say when I first thought of what were, what is humanity's origins, that I originally thought that they were somehow anarchists or anything like that. So that was new, and plugging that in. I mean, that was kind of the easy part because, I just integrated my own ideology, my own beliefs and rules and whatever, into this species. As far as the dialogue, there's a lot of stuff I had to cut out. Again, got constrained for time. And that, the dialogue, it wasn't seat of the pants, but you find when you're making the game that as well laid out as you make the dialogue, things change.
Mm-hmm.
Unavoidably.
Yeah, I can see there were probably a lot of last minute changes to that. Yeah.
Right. And you've got to compress some stuff down, and you kind of have to shift things because this scene can't be there. This aspect of the game can't be there, whatever. And so, yeah, as far as storyline, I had a really good idea of how that was, of what that looked like. But by and large, it was mainly like, it was kind of bullet points where it's like, okay, you have to have a scene that does this. You have to have a scene that does this action scene, and all that. And then, dialogue, you kind of inject in explaining, what happened. So roundabout, the bulk of the story, I could say, other than the ideology, the bulk of the story I more or less had written in my head for like a decade.
Wow.
Yeah, I think, details are different and all that, but the basic gist and notion of the story is, was something that I thought about for a long time.
Okay. Any plans to do a book?
Yes. Yeah. So people have already asked, are you going to novelize this? Are you going to do a novelization? I'm open to that. That won't be the first thing I do. I do plan on writing books, short stories that take place within the universe that are expansions upon, what happens in this game. So that's something that's certainly coming. And in the end, could all of this be brought together, to be one gigantic novel like Frank Herbert's Dune? Not to say it'd be matching that quality. Yeah, maybe. I'm open to that. Yeah.
Cool. I like it. Okay. So what actually is the story? Like, give us, for anybody who doesn't know or maybe is just joining us on the show, what actually is the elevator speech version of the plot?
The elevator speech version would be the destruction of one planet to show the beginning of our own, and our own being Earth. And I use a lot of Semitic terms, and I use the word Semitic because some of it's Hebrew, some of it's Sumerian, some of it's Akkadian. These are all Semitic languages, and Semitic effectively means, like the Fertile Crescent, that area. Or the birthplace of civilization. So it would make sense to use these words. Mm-hmm. That's not the only place I took from. Like I mentioned earlier, the kami, K-A-M-I, is actually, that's Japanese, a transliteration of Japanese.
Yeah.
So it's effectively the destruction of Mars. And if you watch the trailer, I'm not giving anything away, from what's within the game, because the trailer will tell you this, but it is, of course, I use the term madim, which in Hebrew means turning red. And to this day, that's the term for Mars. If you're not using the word Mars, is madim. And so kind of, I'm explaining where that word even comes from. Why does madim mean turning red? And it means turning red because red with blood, because every living thing on Madim dies. Mm-hmm. And so it's about these anarchists getting away from this, this really all powerful Dominion government. And that Dominion government is trying to commit genocide against the kami. And in so doing, they end up killing all of themselves, and so it's the price of coercion. Essentially. And so then, and so the whole plot is the journey on a spaceship from Madim to Aresatu, which is just the Semitic word for Earth. And so, that's pretty much the short plot. The ending of one world to show the beginning of our own.
Yeah. And then on that ship, that's where conflicts start to occur.
Right.
And things start to happen.
Yeah, because So yeah, I mean, this is getting beyond the elevator pitch.
That's okay. I mean, it's a podcast.
Right. But so when you play the game, you'll see all of this. It all gets explained very well. But they're trying to get the kami, which is like this break off, like this genetic mutant race that are anarchists.
To be free.
Yeah, they want to be free. And so they know what's going to happen. They know that the Emok Dominion have made this bioweapon that's designed to wipe out anybody that has kami genetics. And so they're leaving. They're escaping the planet in like these old mining vessels. And there's, to make sure to have the best success, it's actually two separate groups of kami that are leaving. One group's going to go left, the other group's going to go right. And so and yes, will there be times, will I do games of the story of that other group that goes the other direction, that goes like towards the outer part of the solar system instead of the group that this game's about, which are the group that goes into the inner part of the solar system? Absolutely. I have every intention of doing that. And so, so they're getting, this is just anarchists getting away. And that's another thing too, is that and believe me, I know there's a ton of games out there, especially now, but I keep my finger on the pulse with gaming, and I don't know a single mainstream or even not so mainstream, even indie game where the anarchists are heroes. I know plenty of games, like even Future Cop, LAPD. There's tons of games where the anarchists are the bad guys, but never really a game where the anarchists are the genuine heroes. So I think that's another first that HYPERCRONIUS has going for it. Is that the anarchists, which are the kami, they're the heroes.
Well, I mean, the kids got to have some role models for the kids,
Yeah, right.
You're doing it for the children.
Yeah.
So, okay. So, like, what was the process like building this game in RPG Maker?
The process. Oh boy. So most of the time, it's tough to pin down what development looked like for this game. Like how long did it take to make it? That's tough to really like say an exact amount of time for a multitude of reasons. One of them is it's not my only job. I had
working on some other things.
Yeah, I had another, I have a full-time job with ad sales. I do Sovryn tech. I mean, we go to conferences and we speak at those. There's all kinds of things, that I do that wasn't just the game. So it's tough to say, oh, it took me 3 months or it took me 6 months. But the bulk of the time developing the game was not actually developing the game. The bulk of the time was learning how. So from my announcement of saying I'm making a video game, that was very much me. That was my starting point of learning how to make this game. I mean, I had an idea of how to do this, but it is really working with an RPG Maker. I can see where it must be so much simpler than working with the Unreal Engine or something. Okay. But it is still pretty complex. Like, it seems simple when you think about it, but then when you're actually putting it into execution, to have it do it without there being a bug, without something going out of order or somebody walking through a fence or who knows what, or not appearing where they should appear, very difficult to do. So, when you're designing the world, when you're designing the maps, as they're called, like even just the starship. And that was another fortunate thing too. And granted, I kind of tried to keep it within my skill level. It's not your best idea if you're making your very first game, you've never made a game before, you have no history of game development, to go making a gigantic planetary or interplanetary map. You know what I mean? You want to keep it simple.
Yeah.
Okay. And so, mine was just a starship. Now you can travel through pretty much that entire starship. You can see the whole thing. There's not an inch of it that you really can't see in the game. But yeah, I kept it small. But in so doing, keeping it small, with keeping it small, it did make it a bit easier to have all the events happen. Like within a more confined space, I guess you could say. And so, now, like with the second game, I am actually going for an entire world. So this is going to be, very, very, not different, but I mean, it's going to be, it is going to be different. That's it. It's going to be a very different thing.
Yeah.
But I mean, you can, so even within the small space of a spaceship, you can, you kind of, you're pasting like the design, like you have templates, you have tile sets as they call them, and you kind of put those in. And you can design the whole thing. Unfortunately, that sort of forces you to keep things kind of square, at least when you're within rooms. Mm-hmm. Like every room is a box. Mm-hmm. It's kind of, I mean, yes, you can make it somewhat circular or you can do somewhat different designs, but it's kind of limiting in that way. And so, yeah, you can do that. That might be the only real area where RPG Maker makes things a little bit easier, is in world creation. It makes it easy because it is kind of cut and paste. Okay. And just, it's almost like using Microsoft Paint, to set all that up. So that part's pretty easy, but it's also incredibly time consuming. That's kind of the gaff too, is that as easy as it is to create your world, the maps themselves, it's also very, very time consuming, to set all that up. But then after doing the maps and all that, when you start with the characters, you choose your characters, there's a database within the software that, you put in all your elements that you want to use. It has a ton of stuff preset, but the bulk of the software is designed not for a science fiction setting. It's designed for like a medieval setting.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, like a dungeon.
Yeah. Well,
okay.
it's because that's what most RPGs are. They're kind of medieval or fantastical. They're kind of fantasy stories.
Yeah.
And so it's largely set up for that. And so it doesn't make sense. Like that's something I had to do a lot of rewriting of all that to where it's it's not dragons. You know what I mean? It's not this or that. You have to kind of customize that.
Yeah.
And so that takes a ton of time. Just to set up all that base stuff so that when you actually get into writing the game, like writing the action, or coding the action or putting in the dialogue or whatever, when you start to put all that in, that all those pieces are already in place and you don't have to do that one by one, because then I can't imagine how long it would take to make the game.
Yeah. And you can buy like little character packs, right? Yeah,
you can, in the Steam store, you can buy, people will make pre-made tile sets or music or sound effects or whatever, and you can purchase these as add-ons to make the game. I definitely did some of that, and all that was very, very handy. But I mean, and they make it very clear when you purchase these things that they can be used for commercial or non-commercial use, which obviously I'm using them for commercial. And so, yeah, it's, to really describe what it takes, because then you get into like, you have three main settings. There's no way I could describe how RPG Maker works entirely in this podcast, and it'd probably be boring anyway if I did. But you kind of have, I'll say there's two major areas. There's three, one of them zones, but that's besides the point. There's two major areas. One is design, where you're laying out the map and you're, drawing everything and making, doing the artwork essentially. And then there's the event, screen, or the event, screen. And that's where you get into the coding, and that's where everything has to be in perfect order. And you have to choose, you have to choose what you want things to do. And they give you kind of they make it a little bit easier by giving you the option of what you want a character to do. Like, say you want a character to move in a specific position, okay, in a screen. To do that, you have to choose, so you're editing an event on this screen, and you have to say, move up, move up, move up, move left, but you have to put in each code manually. Or you have to put in each thing manually, and you got to get it absolutely right. And because if somehow you put, when you're drawing the map, if you put like a tree or something in the character's way where you designed it to move, the whole event won't go. And it'll just lock up the game. Yeah. So that's what I'm saying, is that people, I think there's this, and I've read online, I'm not talking about people in the Liberty community. I'm talking about people in gaming who think that RPG Maker is this some kind of cheat. Yeah. Bullshit. It's a cheat. I mean, this is a pain in the ass. You know, like, I mean, yes, I can see where it makes some things simpler, but it's still really, really tough. And learning all of that, I mean, it took months.
Yeah.
You know, to figure to figure all that out and how that works and how I can mold it into my story. I mean, look, if I wanted to just make a dungeon crawler, you know, I might have been able to knock it out in pretty short order. You know, with very little story and all that stuff, I probably could have made that happen really fast. But to make a science fiction, a very unique story, and obviously there's not a single stitch of RPG Maker that somehow lets you program sex. You know, you're totally cheating the system in that way. You know, that took a lot of time.
Yeah. Yeah, it is interesting that you were able to do something pretty complex with it, though, even on your first game, that it's not really meant to do.
Certainly some unique stuff.
So, okay. Tell me about learning WordPress and building your website, because that was a whole other thing that went along with this project.
Sure. So, you know, and after this, maybe we could talk about, like, because my original deadline was April 5th.
Yeah.
It's supposed to be on Ishtar or Easter. Sorry. And
no, you're not. Bullshit.
Right. It's supposed to be on April 5th. And it got to the point where I realized, like, a week before, I'm like, I'm going to give this everything I've got, but I don't think this thing's going to be in a finished form on April 5th. And so I said to you, you know, I said, Stephanie, I'm like, look, you know, I don't think this is going to happen. It's like, but I got to make this website's got to be up and live. There's got to be something here for people to know this is real. This is legit. This is happening. Because, I mean, you know, not just in gaming, in anything, particularly, and maybe you can verify this, in the Liberty space, okay, which is my initial audience that I have. Like that's the thing, right? Is that, you know, if you are wanting to be an indie game developer, if you don't have any kind of crowd or any kind of niche around you to at least start off with, oh, you got a tough road. You either got to have an amazing fucking game, and you can, you know, there's something a saying I learned while making the game, that a mediocre story can't save great gameplay, but a great story can save mediocre gameplay. Okay, so, you know, there's a lot of things you can get away with, I think. But as far as like getting actual sales and getting noticed, if you're starting from square one, you have no niche, you have nothing else, and you don't have like a pristine, perfect game, you know, that is just perfect in every way. And, you know, it's at length, great gameplay and great story and all that. You know, I don't know how you're going to pull that off. You know, I don't know how you're going to like make it, at all. And so in liberty spaces in general, the point I was trying to get to is that, or in the libertarian or liberty movement, a lot of people talk about, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this project, whatever. And a lot of times it never comes into existence.
Yeah, sometimes they even fundraise and they don't
end
up coming out.
Which I made it a point to not fundraise.
Yeah,
you know,
you were very adamant you were never going to do that.
Right. No one's butt was on the line except mine. And so, but I mean, this is true in gaming. This is true in just about any space, really. There's always a lot in the Bitcoin space, wherever there's a lot of talk that they'll get this developed, they'll release it, and they never do. Okay. And, so it was really, you know, important to me with the website. It's like, look, people got to know that this is happening. They need to see forward development. They need to see forward motion. And I started revealing some screenshots about a month before that time anyway. And so, you know, I asked you, I was like, okay, look, you know, I've got this, I've had this website for a while. I've had this domain name for a while. I just had to go to the SoundCloud page. I need to make a website. Stephanie, can you help me out? Mm-hmm. And you gave me some, you know, pretty good training in between the whole thing. You know, I mean, between you and Google, I think I learned a lot in a really short period of time. And
it's
it was
nice to be up there with Google. Yeah. Well,
it was mainly you. I was just going to say it was really mainly you, that showed me all that. And, yeah, that was, you know, getting it set up, with WordPress. Like WordPress it's a lot easier to deal with than just about anything. And it's important too. I think people should learn WordPress for quite a few reasons, because first off, WordPress, totally follows like every credo I have for technology. Like if there's a checklist of things that technology needs to do, be open source and all this, they do it with flying colors. In fact, even the Free Software Foundation says WordPress is amazing. That's very tough to please the Free Software Foundation. And so WordPress is great. Setting all that up, and I knew what I wanted. I knew well ahead of time, months ahead of time, what I wanted to do with the website, what I want available, and there's still features that I'm still rolling out. But that took about a week to really get that website perfect.
It does. It takes time to build websites.
Yeah,
it really does. Especially when you're putting in an e-commerce setup,
right?
Which you did. You had to get your WooCommerce rolling. Yeah,
that was a pain, and the Bitcoin thing was a real pain, because so I'm not using BitPay or Coinbase, and real point of pride on my part, because I'm actually helping grow the network. Okay, I'm not just like using some kind of underrunning thing, some kind
You're not just taking people's Bitcoin and selling it for dollars right away.
Right, exactly. It's, I'm not using a back end really of any kind other than WooCommerce. Somebody a year ago or so made a really great Bitcoin plugin for it. But there's a caveat to that we learned. And that is that this plugin hasn't been updated as much as Electrum, which it connects with, has been updated. And so if you somehow Electrum they change the way that they display your master public key. And
that's what it relies on.
Right. And
that's the
plugin relies on.
Yeah. To generate a new Bitcoin address each time you have a new customer.
Exactly. And so you fortunately had a copy of Electrum 1.9.8.
Can you believe it? Sometimes being a pack rat comes in really handy.
Yeah.
Even a digital pack rat.
Right. So you had that, and that was the last version of Electrum that would actually work with the plugin. And so got that going, and then finally, up to the minute of release, finally got that working. Okay, so the website content was getting posted there and all that. And of course I had set for a month, HYPERCRONIUS was just listed as out of stock, because I wasn't entirely sure when it was going to come out. But pretty much May 1st came around, May was coming, and I said, no, this game's got to be done May 1st. It has to be finished for, a multitude of reasons. Yeah. So got it done on May 1st. And then, the next couple days was just making sure that the checkout worked fine, and all of that. But
me playing it through and I died.
Yeah, right. Which you weren't supposed to be able to. I think we didn't get to that point earlier, but that was the thing, is that I made it so, yes, there's some danger involved and it is possible to die. But it was supposed to be a really rare occurrence that you could die, because part of the gameplay, I'm kind of giving this away. Part of the gameplay in the game is that you only have one of the three characters can actually heal the other characters. And so there is some degree of innovative gameplay there, to where it's not innovative, but where it takes some strategy. That HYPERCRONIUS could die, or Gaia could die, or even Tiamat could die. But there's very specific ways that you could, heal them.
If Gaia or Tiamat dies, does HYPERCRONIUS and the other one carry on, or?
Yeah, they can carry on, but you're in trouble.
Oh, wow.
Because there's things could get bad, because there's a ton of those snakes. So anyway, so setting up the website, getting all that, it helped that I knew what I wanted. It helped that I knew that, okay, I'm going to have books coming out, so I make a book section. I'm going to have, I have this thing called the Sovryn Quorum that I'm working on that still hasn't been released. So I want to make sure that's there. The blog, I want to have the Zog blog. I'm going to be doing Dark Android, because I said I would do a Dark Android site, and I had been squatting on darkandroid.info for a few months. And so setting up the website, you totally helped out with that. But there was finer points to that, particularly with integrating Bitcoin, that were very, very difficult. And so I guess the overall story here is that to try and do all of this on your own, to try and repeat what I was doing, is incredibly difficult, to do, to be a total one-man show on all of this, I wasn't even a one-man show. I had you. is just insanely difficult.
Yeah, you got to do a lot of different things.
Yeah, but WordPress is great. The plugins are awesome. You can get a really good looking, very functional website set up. In fact, I just recently got it to where I got an SSL certificate put on it because of the way Google and Firefox have been talking recently. I was like, okay, well, my site's just not going to appear if I don't have SSL.
Yeah.
So now when you go to the site, there's HTTPS. That I had to remove some features because of that. It's a real learning experience, because the internet is a very broken thing. Okay. And so if some of the plugins or some of the, like embed code that you want to put in doesn't respect SSL certificates, you're fucked.
Yeah.
As soon as you turn it on.
Yeah.
So that was kind of a real pain in the ass with that. But the website works great now. And now that it's done, it's easy to just kind of add on and improve, but you got to have that great framework, and certainly you helped out, a ton, with that.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I think the checkout process is pretty nice. Like it works, nobody's had problems with checkout once we tested it.
Yeah.
Although it's funny there was one lady who bought your game while you were checking out I was testing the checkout. She bought it because she was just refreshing the page because she knew it was going to come out. That's dedication.
Yeah,
she deserves a mention.
Yeah, she's great. But that, something else too, like a bug that I actually haven't figured out with using this Bitcoin WooCommerce plugin is that if you use a Coinbase wallet, and I made sure to put a mention when people check out with Bitcoin that it tells you this, but it puts this funny when you scan the QR code on the site to pay with Bitcoin. If you're using a Coinbase wallet and only a Coinbase wallet, it puts these two backslashes in the front of the address to send to, and it won't let you send the Bitcoin. And so a couple people like I would get a notification that a sale was made, but that I never received the Bitcoin. And finally I figured out what it was, and I would just have to email them and say, look, I was like, just check it out. I know you're using Coinbase and that's fine. But just understand that when you sent it, you probably got a message that said it didn't send. And that's because these two slashes appeared in the front. So if you could just remove those and resend, everything will be fine.
Boy,
and
that's
it worked
weird.
out great.
Yeah.
It's just a strange thing. So, I mean, there's all these things that you learn about. I mean, when you're really, when you're not using, when you're doing everything as homegrown as possible, with your only caveats being RPG Maker.
Those little things definitely come up.
Right. And WordPress. I mean, oof, boy, ugly. So, but anyway, that's what it's like doing the website. I'm not sure what else necessarily to say on that, but there's a lot more coming from the website as well.
Cool. Okay. Well, that was actually going to be my next. I guess, what have you learned from this whole experience of building your first game and like putting up a website, embarking on this new business venture? Like, tell me, I don't know, just some of the things you've learned.
Oh, wow. First thing is with deadlines, make your public deadline 2 days to a week ahead of your personal deadline.
Yeah, definitely.
Like, that's just a fact, because something's going to go wrong. I mean, even when you're using all these tools like RPG Maker, like WordPress, whatever else, to try and make to make it all happen as quickly and easily as possible. You really, you've got to, you got to expect that something's going to go wrong. And I'm not an idiot when it comes to tech stuff. I mean, for fuck's sake, I run a tech show. Okay. That's my job. But yeah, just something's going to happen, like actually with HYPERCRONIUS with the game, I actually re-uploaded it and kind of re-released it like 3 times because there were still bugs. There was typos that I fixed, which I think I've got all those nipped out, but there's like a third final version that I had just done, I think on May 9th, and the game came out technically on the 3rd or the 4th.
Have you ever seen that meme where it's like every graphic designer's, project folder, and it says, okay, final dot whatever JPG, and final, then final.
Exactly. That's exactly it. Like originally I had released it as a .zip, And then I'm like, oh shit, some of these companies, some of these distribution houses are going to want an exe installer. And so then I re-released the game with an exe installer instead of a .zip. Didn't really change much other than the fact that now it installs and it can put a nice desktop icon, on your Windows PC, or whichever. So anyway, but as far as what I learned, yeah, you've got to give yourself that breathing room, but you've got to hold on to that personal deadline. You have to have that. Otherwise you'll never. And I mean, the last 3 days, that month where I delayed, like the bulk of that was literally me forgetting to eat, like just barely taking time to eat, because, and not sleeping much. I mean, the last few days, particularly, I think I slept, 4 hours a night at best, getting up very early, to do that. But it really takes that drive to make a finished product. And so, I learned that about deadlines. I've learned that you've really got to be realistic with yourself in what you can actually do. And if you don't know how to do something, maybe it's even best to not even announce it. I mean, that can work two ways. One thing I did was I announced it to kind of hold myself accountable to, I'm going to make this fucking game. Yeah. But in the other sense, it can kind of make you look bad. Because if you don't release it on time, I mean, what's going to happen there? So, there's that. I mean, as far as like all the things I feel like I learned so much about myself, in doing this.
Yeah, that's what I was asking.
Yeah. And but trying to put that into words, what I learned about myself, definitely gets you even more in touch with reality. And I like to think I'm a person that's very much in touch with reality. I learned what my own skills are. Again, that time frame where it's like, okay, you know what, you've got to hold yourself responsible. And if you're going to lose sleep about this, you're going to lose sleep about it. I learned a lot of what it, I want to say, and I'm not saying I'm successful, at least not yet with this game, but like people that have really made it from zero to whatever, whatever amount of money or whatever their metric of success is. They had to have earned that, because what it takes, even with all the shortcuts in the world, and I don't believe there are many, with what it takes to get to that point. I mean, you really gotta earn you learn a respect for what it takes to get people to make a successful product, or to even not even a successful product, what it takes to actually make a released product. I feel so differently about every game developer on the planet Earth right now, because this is so hard, to make a real game. I mean, you get a respect. You get a respect for art. You learn a respect. I've learned a respect for, development, what it takes. I've earned a new respect for what it takes to have a finished product, because really for the first time in my life, I have a product out there, more so than my podcast, more so than anything else. It's a genuine full on product. And that it just takes a ton of hard work. To really, to make something that can resonate with people and but that's you. I don't know. It's tough. It's tough to say everything that I've learned about myself, in doing this. It's really tough to put it into words.
I think it was a real growth experience for you, though.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. In a lot of ways. Go ahead.
Towards the end of when you were working on the game, we listened to this podcast from Jake from The Voluntary Life. Mm-hmm. And it was about a lot of things, like various ways people kind of fool themselves. But one of the things that he said in that podcast was about basically there's this effect in psychology called the Dunning-Kruger effect, also called the illusory superiority bias. We've talked about it on the show before. Mm-hmm. But it's basically where the skills to determine, the skills to be able to tell if you're good at something are the same skills to actually be good at the thing. So oftentimes when people start a new project or they do something new, they aren't very good at it, but they aren't even aware that they're not very good at
right.
it.
Yeah.
And then like as they start to master it, they start to realize how they're how they've still got so much more to learn,
Yeah.
and they start to realize that they're actually not very good at it yet.
Yep, totally experienced that.
Yeah.
I totally experienced that. And I mean, definitely.
It was such a timely podcast,
Yeah.
for me to hear too.
Yeah. Definitely for me. I was glad you shared it with me, and Jake's work with the voluntary life is, of course, amazing. Yeah. I mean, if I had hair to pull out, I would have been pulling it out, especially like that last week, because it's just so hard, but you can do it, like you can make it happen. You can figure it out. But you don't want to delude yourself, and I think there was points in the development where even I was kind of deluding myself. Like I set my goals for what I wanted to be in this game. I thought I set them pretty modest, but I realized pretty soon, no, I set them so high, way too high. Mm-hmm. But once you do, the thing is though, is that once you do the first one, it doesn't necessarily get easier. Like I'm still working in many ways just as hard as before I released the game, because now I'm trying to market the thing, trying to get sales to get it out there. And sales numbers aren't where I want them to be yet. You know what I mean? So I'm still, stressing and working on that. But once you get like that foundation, that's really kind of that point where you go from, kind of amateur to professional, I guess, is when you have that foundation of what it takes. Like now I have a very good understanding of how RPG Maker works. I can do WordPress, night and day.
Yeah.
A lot of these things,
a lot of different skills.
Yeah. And all of that's good to know, all of that's really, really, really great to learn. But that's the thing too, that's what it takes to, to get to that next level. But the other thing, one of the things I learned too, though, as far as like how to get any kind of sales for something you make, or how to get any kind of interaction for something you make, in today's world, you can't just do one thing. Like, I think that's impossible. I'm doing like 5 different things, and I think all of that is required for any single one of them to somehow get some measure of reach. Mm-hmm. I don't think people realize that. Like, I think just having a podcast, and I like to think Sovryn Tech is a pretty good podcast. But just having a podcast is, and I do it for me, but if I was wanting to make money off of Sovryn Tech, you can't just do a podcast. Yeah. You've got to have other hats. You really, really do. Just like with the game, one of the other things that gave me a lot of confidence about making the game is that I feel like I had somewhat of a built-in audience, that would be interested in the game. And if you don't have that, well, maybe you want to see how you can build that. And it's kind of chicken and the egg. What comes first? I mean, whatever one you can do pretty well, you certainly want to at least start with that. and then like whatever that may be, if that's blogging or if that's podcasting, and then you write a book, or then you make a game, or then you do this, do that.
Yeah, I think it makes sense to pick a few that you like or are good at. You don't have to do everything.
No, you don't have to do everything. But I mean,
probably helps to have more than one modality. Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, maybe do it in reverse. Like maybe you're a great game designer, but you want to be a podcaster. Mm-hmm. Okay, make a great game first, and then go be a podcaster. Yeah. And because then on your podcast, you can say, I made this game. You know what I mean? And that gives your podcast maybe some gravitas. And it gives you a built-in audience, perhaps. Mm-hmm. And maybe even you can mention your podcast in your game or something. I don't know. But I think it's in today's world with all, with so much content, we were talking about flooded markets out there. You can't, anytime you're selling something, you're selling yourself. Like that's been true long before the internet.
Oh, I hate being such a hooker.
Yeah, right. Right. But I think you really can't just have one hat anymore. That's just not possible. Not to get any, like I said, not to get any reach or any leeway out there and to make something of it. So anyway, those are a lot of the things that I've learned, and I wish that wasn't so. Like for 2 years, Sovryn Tech was my only gig, like that was my only, product of my brain that I put out there. And I didn't even have a website. I totally ran off of the SoundCloud thing. I don't like interacting on social media, but I had social media. Mm-hmm. I mean, I don't want to say I did the bare minimum because Sovryn Tech, took a lot out of me. That's not a minimum thing, but I'm just saying that, like, where could Sovryn Tech be if I had done other things earlier? I don't know.
Right.
I wonder about that. How important is doing Sex and Science Hour with you, that podcast? How important is that to Sovryn Tech's, modicum of success that it has? I just, again,
I don't know. I struggle.
Yeah.
A lot of people really liked that show.
Yeah.
It was very popular, but how would we make money off of it? How would we find the time to do it? I don't know.
Yeah. And
what value does it bring?
Yeah. And please understand, folks, it's not like you have to do everything for money. Okay. But like Sex and Science Hour, one of the things that we were kind of pitched was that we would make money off of doing it. And
so there was basically a business agreement that did not come to pass.
Right. So there's a reason that how do you make money off of it is an important question.
Yeah.
In that regard. So anyway, I mean, this is kind of a whole ton of thoughts strung together. So. Yeah,
well, it's a good answer. I guess I'd like to wrap it up soon. I'm getting kind of tired.
Sure.
But I guess just why don't we head off on well, first of all, do you think this is a legit job now, being a game designer?
Ooh, I feel, okay, yes. I want to say yes. As far as like, can I make a living off of doing this alone right now? Mm-hmm. No, it's not at that point yet.
Yeah.
I'd like it to get to that point. Because I like doing Sovryn Tech for free. I like doing all that stuff,
How can people help you be able to support yourself as a game designer?
Oh, buy the game, share the game. I mean, that's kind of it. Like there's no, I have a really good idea and I have a very good idea of what I want to put into future games and how to do that. So, I don't think like the gift of knowledge is something that I'm needing. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I mean, people could share it around, purchase it. Of course, you go to the website, ZomiaOfflineGames.com or Zog.ninja, and there's a support us tab there with plenty of ways, Patreon, I mean, PayPal monthly subscriptions. I mean, there's all kinds of ways to really, help out with all of these things.
Yep. Shipped, and you've been doing a show every Saturday or Sunday in one case.
Yeah.
For the past 2 years, 2.5. Right?
Yeah.
So yeah, I think you've really built up that trust. You're consistent,
Sure.
So.
Well, that's the thing. I mean, Steve Jobs is a great quote, real artists ship.
You shipped.
And I shipped. I ship all the time, and I was a month late on the release, but at least I feel like I can say, no, when I say I'm going to deliver something to people, it's going to get out there,
Yeah.
and it's out there.
I guess, it's hard to beat yourself up over that. It was kind of an arbitrary date that you picked, and it turned out that you weren't ready, and you didn't really start to see that you weren't going to make it until pretty close to that deadline you had set. So you had to delay. Yeah.
But that, deadlines I think are important. You gotta do that.
They are, they're very important, but it was late, but better late than never.
That's right.
And it's out now. So
yeah. So
good job. There you go.
Thank you. Yeah. So those are the ways that anybody can help with the matter. Because, I think, I'll just say this, having games where anarchists are heroes is so essential. I wish there were movies where that was true. Largely, it's not true. There's some books out there, no doubt about that. There's the Culture series from Ian Banks that's really popular. There's all that kind of stuff. But I mean, these ideas need to take hold in media in as many ways as they can. And video games is one of the areas where it's kind of untouched. I'm glad to be largely or at least someone that has some degree of that people know me, know who I am, to be the first one.
Yeah. And this is part of how this work aligns with your values.
Right.
So you can get to share the message.
Yeah, exactly.
And you don't even have to run for political office to do it.
Yeah. Yeah. Right. Never, ever, ever. If I ever,
why I love you.
Yeah. If I ever run for politics, then there's two things that you can know. One is that I was dead wrong about aliens. There are aliens.
And they've taken over your body.
They've taken over my body. If I suddenly say I'm running for politics, bullshit. I'll never, ever do that. But anyway.
Cool.
Yeah.
Good to know, Brian.
Yeah. So
Me
I'll just
too.
keep making video
Same
games.
for me. I will never do that.
Yeah.
And if I do, something is very seriously wrong. Anyway, so what are you going to do next?
Next is, well, I've been working pretty hard on Dark Android. That blog has been happening. I've been posting on that blog pretty regularly. A lot of people have been appreciating what I do with Dark Android. I've been doing that. There is, I don't know if I want to give everything away that I'm working on right now, but.
Well, I think a lot of people would be wondering, are you going to do another game?
Yes, it's already in development. There's a second and a third game literally already in development, as in code is laid down.
Cool. Wow.
Yeah.
I didn't even know code had been laid down.
Yeah.
You heard it here first, folks, on Sovereign Tech.
So, and these games are going to be, one of these games is another small game, but the other is huge. So like it's really going to be a very large game. I'm going to be trying my hand at that. So that's what's going on as far as that. There is going to be, I have a book planned to get released very soon. I have something else. I have kind of an odd idea that I'm not going to reveal what it is, but
I know what it is.
Yeah, but I'm just saying that things are taking place. So lots to see. And I am setting up the Sovryn Quorum, which I'll let people know that listen to this podcast. I won't say it in any other show, but the Sovryn Quorum is actually going to be a forum system, and it's going to have exclusive content, and it will be a subscription service set up, kind of like what Free Talk Live does with their AMP service. Mm-hmm. The main show, the main content, the really, really important stuff is always going to be free. Always. The Sovereign Tech is the main thing I like to think that I do in many ways, and that's always going to be out there available for free. But there's going to be some fun other stuff that I think is going to be part of, part of the website. So that's the plan. That's the plan there. So people, you definitely heard that here first.
Right. Woohoo.
Yeah. So lots to do.
Very exciting. Okay. Yeah. I think we better wrap this up.
Let's end it.
Thanks for giving the behind the scenes. I think this is pretty cool for our listeners to hear.
Yeah. It's
Hope
nice.
They enjoyed hearing your thoughts.
Yeah. Kind of a nice insider, gives some hints as to what's going on. And there's a lot more that could have been said as far as like all the little Easter eggs that exist within HYPERCRONIUS, the game as it is right now.
I loved the game. I've said this before. I'll say it again. I loved it. I fell in love with the characters. They're so cute.
Yeah.
They're just so freaking cute. I mean,
yeah, and
little hearts coming out of their heads and kissy face with the two girls. That is just the cutest thing I've ever seen.
and many of these characters will return.
Good.
So,
okay, that's
people
great.
are wondering that they will return in one way or another. So
great. Okay, cool. Well, thanks so much, Brian.
Oh,
this
thanks,
has been really
Stephanie.
fun.
Yeah, this is great. So
Let's
anyway,
go to bed.
Carpe Lucem,
Let's
everybody. Yeah, let's get to bed. I'll see you on the other side. Oh boy, what's going to happen in bed?
They won't hear it. It won't be recorded. Woo!
You just experienced Sovryn Tech. Go to sovryntech.com, that's SOVRYN tech.com, and connect with us there. Find links from today's show and catch our podcast feed. Sovryn Tech is copy heart. Copying art is an act of love, and love is not subject to law. So please share the show however you like. Welcome to the evolution.